Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Katie and Siegfried Show.
Today we're going to talk about our trip to Gunston Hall.
Yeah, so we took that trip back in July, on July 11th, and it was a lot of fun because it was Siegfried's first time. I'd been there several times before, and I was very excited to take Siegfried on his first time.
Yeah, as far as I remember, anyways, it was the first time. I don't think I'd been there before. But yeah, it was really nice because we went on a day. I think it was during the week. I probably had the day off or something.
It was a Sunday.
Oh, it was a Sunday. Okay, sorry, my memory's not great. But the reason being I say that is because when we went there was basically no one else there. I think we saw 2 people there when we got there, 2 tourists, and then there was at least 1, maybe 2 tourists when we were leaving that we saw.
Yeah.
But it was nice because when we got our tour, we got the tour just the 2 of us and our tour guide, which was fantastic because she was able to take a lot longer and answer any and every question that we had. But we'll get to that when we get to the tour section, which should be shortly. But I want to just talk about driving in and what that was like. It's an absolutely gorgeous place. It felt very much like we were being transported back in time because outside of the fact that there's a weird parking lot there, if you got rid of the parking lot and maybe got rid of the visitor center, I feel like it would have just felt like we were going back in time.
Yeah.
It felt very naturey, and when you looked around the grounds, even in the parking lot, when you looked around, you didn't really see, like, the road or anything, like, so it very much felt detached from, like, modern-day civilization, which was really nice. It was very nice. Calming effect.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we got there, we parked, and then we walked over to the visitor center.
Yeah, so we went inside and we chatted with them very briefly. There were 2 employees in there. I can't remember how much it cost. It wasn't too bad, though.
$10 a person.
$10 a person?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't too bad. I mean, like I said, we got that covered, like, the tour, basically, and then we had the entire grounds to just wander. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great, because we went on the tour, and you kind of walk through the building, and you can see, like, there's a little museum area.
Yeah. Like,
a bunch of exhibits you can go through, which, obviously, you don't go through on the tour, but when you come back around from your tour and all, you can go through that, which we did, so we'll talk about that. We didn't look at every single thing there, but we looked at most of it. I think we hit most of the things, and then we went to the gift shop, which was really fun.
Yeah.
But back to the tour part. Yeah, so Lady took us around. She was fantastic. One of the best tour guides I've had. To be fair, it was just the 2 of us, so she could take infinitely more time. When do you want to move on from the room versus, like, all right, we got another group, like, we got to move,
Yeah.
So that was very helpful. Like, we'd go into a room and, like, she'd give us the whole spiel, and then we'd ask a whole bunch of questions, because a lot of what she said was very interesting. Like, half the house is very fancy and showing off the Mason's wealth, and then the other half is very down to earth, very calm and relaxed, and very
more family friendly.
Right. It was more not so fancy. Like, yeah, obviously the stuff there probably the average family couldn't afford, but relative to some of the rooms where it's like the fanciest silverware you can imagine, this is more like generic silverware, so to speak, relative to the fanciness level.
Yeah, I mean, let's get this straight. George Mason was one of the wealthiest people, and, like, at the time, he lived in a huge mansion. It's huge by today's standards. So, and back at the time, so George Mason, he was, like I said, he was one of the founding fathers, and he built this house in the mid-1750s, and so, having a 2-story, multi-room house at the time, very unheard of, so very wealthy guy.
Right, and yeah, so what I'm trying to say is just, like, if you can imagine being there, if you haven't been there, you should go, first of all. But second of all, like, it's very much like, it was a very strange dynamic coming in and just expecting everything to be super fancy because, that's generally how these places are. But it was very fascinating to see that, yeah, no, like, the family would actually go to this side of the house where it's, like, much calmer and, like, less fancy stuff. And there were a whole lot of kids there.
Yeah, he had a dozen kids with his first wife, although only 9 of them lived to adulthood.
Right.
He did have a second wife because the first wife died around mid-1770s. But he and the second wife did not have any children because when they got married, the wife was in her 50s, and that's typically past the point where women can have kids.
Right. So that was, I would say, the biggest thing to me on the tour was just, number one, hearing about how many kids he had and how, like, they would live in this house. I mean, it's pretty sizable, I'm not going to lie. But still, it's like, it's a little crazy to think, you know, especially back in those days when certain things that we've come to just rely on so much just didn't exist.
Air conditioning and plumbing.
But yeah, like the fact that he wanted the family side of the house to not be as fancy. Like, you know, he wanted his children not, I guess, I don't know if it was necessarily for his kids or for himself, but like, it very much felt like he was trying to be like, hey, like, yeah, I know I gotta show off to, like, the guests, but, like, the real me is not that guy, right? Yeah, it was very cool, because when we went through the house, we got the option to go through the servants' staircase, to put it politely, more likely slaves.
Yeah.
Translated slaves. You know, but point being, the lady said, hey, you know, like, normally we don't do that because too many people in here, but hey, it's just the two of you, like, smaller group. By all means, I always offer it on a smaller group if you want to go up the servant staircase. It's extremely cramped and very uncomfortable. It is lit nicely, though. Now, she said to keep in mind, you know, obviously these people did not have modern lighting, so at best they'd have a candle with them. And I struggled up these stairs with the lights on. I cannot imagine how it would have been in the dark. I probably would have tripped and fallen every single time. But it was worth going up them that way because I think it definitely gave me, like, more of a sense of what the slaves would have experienced. And then we came down the main stairway later, so we got to see what the regular staircase was like.
Yep.
It was such a stark difference because, you know, that staircase is what the Masons used. It's very nice. Yeah, and then we also saw the laundry, which was a separate building.
Yeah.
Where the slaves would have had to work. And then we also saw the kitchen, which I believe, if my memory serves, was also a separate building. Yes. And then from there, that was where our tour ended, because we went through the whole house. We saw the bedrooms. We saw some kind of, like, closet-y-esque thing. It wasn't quite a closet, but it's where they'd store, like, the towels and stuff, right? Or the linens.
Yes.
That might have been more accurate. But yeah, we saw the rooms. They weren't terrible, but I mean, considering most of them were shared by multiple people, it was probably not the best. But I mean, for its time, it was probably far and above what most people had.
Because most people were living in a one-room house.
Right. So like, I wouldn't complain if I lived there and I was one of the Masons. Then our tour ended. The lady was nice enough to let us go in the kitchen and the laundry with her, and she talked about all that stuff, which is fascinating. The conditions that the slaves had to work in is just abysmal. But it was very interesting to see what it was like and see, like, you know, I believe some of those buildings, if not most of the side buildings, were recreations.
Yeah, all of the side buildings were reproductions. However, the original house is original.
Right, the original house was the same as it has been.
And we also saw the schoolhouse, too.
One thing important to note here is they did say the wallpaper was not original.
Yes, it, you know, deteriorates over time, and plus there was some owners after the Masons, and they decided, oh, the old wallpaper isn't our cup of tea anymore. It's 1888. We want more wallpaper, or new wallpaper that's not from the 1700s, you know? Right,
but so it was interesting to see the contrast, because, like, these are what the buildings would have looked like. You know, we have good understanding of what these would have looked like, but they're not the originals. However, the actual mansion itself, like Katie said, was the original.
Yeah.
It was very fascinating to talk to the tour guide, though, because she was saying the wallpaper that they get, they actually, I believe they imported from England.
Well, the Masons would have imported it from England.
Well, I mean the one they have currently, because she said they have a special design.
Yeah, I forgot where she said they got it from, but they got it from...
someone who makes it like the same way it was made back then. Yeah. They're kind of guessing on what color it was, so she did say the wallpaper changes every couple months or something.
every couple years.
Couple years. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Just because they're not 100% sure what would have been there. The only pictures they have, I believe, were like 100 years later or 200 years later.
Were the pictures they have were later because photography wasn't a thing until the 1800s.
Right, so. And it wasn't written down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they know what catalogs he looked at, but they don't know...
Which one he picked.
Which one he ended up picking.
Right, and so that was very interesting. And then there was something I wish I had put in my notes. The only other thing that was not the only other thing that was interesting about the house, but the only other thing that really stood out to me about the house was this very oddly designed flooring in one of the rooms. I think it was like a carpeting or something. It was very weirdly designed. I wish I'd written it down because the lady explained it and it was fascinating.
Oh yeah, in his personal study, he had this, I forget what she called it, but there's this, like, rug to prevent the wood from being messed up. Right,
it was really interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they were great. I liked both of the employees there. As far as the tour guides went, we only had one tour guide, but the other lady was quite nice as well.
He's referring to the ticket lady.
The ticket lady, yes. But yeah, it was very good. Even she did spend some time in the laundry in the kitchen talking about that, and then the other thing before the tour ended was just mentioning, hey, we're doing some excavation around here, some archaeological digs. I forget what they were looking for. Do you know, Katie?
They were looking for a fence.
Okay, they were looking for a fence. Gotcha. That's right. That reminds me. They were redoing the entire gardens.
Yes.
And unfortunately, by the time we went there, it wasn't done. But she was like, hey, if you come back, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. I believe their gardener was leaving the job.
Yes, the horticulturist was leaving because his spouse got into grad school in, like, Michigan or something like that.
Right, so...
Far away, and he couldn't stay in the job.
They did say, if anyone knows a
horticulturist.
Katie said, if anyone knows one, to send their resume over, because they are looking for a new one. Fortunately, neither of us do that kind of work, so... But yes, we are hoping to go back eventually. I can't remember exactly the time frame for when the plants will be growing and all that, but it should look absolutely gorgeous. We were not allowed out there at the time. They kept the door locked, but she let us look outside, because they're working on it, like I said. And yeah, so that was the tour. It's a bit jumbled up because my notes kind of went back and forth.
And then we visited the schoolhouse on our own after.
After the tour was done, we went over to the schoolhouse, which was really cool. There's a very small bedroom in the upstairs for the tutor to live in. Because Mr. Mason, of course, had private tutors for his kids. Or private tutor.
Well, over the course of the kid's lifetime, so multiple tutors.
Right, it was probably multiple, over time, right. But my point being, it would probably be only one at a time.
One at a time, but he had multiple because the kids had a huge age range.
And then we went over to the graveyard, and we saw some grave markers that said unknown. They didn't know who was buried in certain spots. But we did see George Mason in his first wife's tomb. Katie had mentioned... I believe it was Katie who mentioned that the second wife was probably buried with her family out in Dumfries.
Yeah.
And then... This does remind me of another thing. Apparently I didn't take the best notes here, unfortunately. But, hey... I'm remembering as it comes to me. There was a beautiful portrait of one of his wives. I think it was the...
First wife.
First wife. And we don't have any portrait of the second wife.
Yeah, there are no portraits of the second wife.
Which is kind of odd to me. But, that's...
why is it odd to you?
Just because, why not get one done of your second wife, right?
Fair.
But, that was just interesting, because I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, okay, I get, his first wife, he's with her for a long time. Of course you're going to have a portrait done, but, you got remarried. I mean, you got the wealth. Granted, by I don't know. Perhaps he offered and his second wife said no. I don't know.
I'm not sure all the details.
But yeah, it was very interesting to see that his second wife was not buried with him. But as Katie mentioned, she had family out in Dumfries, and I believe you said she went to live with her family after he passed.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was the only marriage she had, and she didn't have any kids with him, so she spent I believe she was in her 50s when they got married. She spent the first 50 years of her life with her family on Dumfries. Why not be buried with them?
And I'll say the walk to the graveyard was rather calm, a little somber, but I definitely thought they did a good job of keeping the area clean.
Yes.
And it was very easy to find. It wasn't like you're wandering the grounds going, where am I? Where am I going next? Everything was well designed, well marked. The grounds are kept very clean. It was absolutely beautiful out there. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, we only saw one other person when we were leaving. I think he was on a tour at the time when we were heading out. So after we saw all those things, we went back to the main building, the visitor center, and walked through the museum section. There was a small section of it that we kind of breezed through. I don't remember why, if we were tired or just had somewhere to go. But we did spend a lot of time in the rest of the museum looking over different things that was very interesting. They had like his old glasses or potentially replica, I can't remember. But they showed some of the tools that he would have used and some other relics from that time period.
Yeah.
And a lot of little like pull out things or flip through this thing to read about different parts of his life.
Lots of hands-on activities for the kids.
Yeah, it was good. And then we went to the gift shop, which was really cool because they had a lot of very good stuff there. They had a good variety. I mean, they had postcards. They had the usual postcards, mugs. You can buy peanuts. You can buy some books. You could buy everything you can think of. We did pick up. I picked up a mug, and we picked up some postcards.
And you picked up a spoon.
I also picked up a collectible spoon for my collectible spoon collection.
How many times can you say the word collectible in one sentence?
I don't know. But, so that was very fun. The mug is used to this day for tea. I don't know Mr. Mason's beverage of choice. Probably not tea, considering, Boston Tea Party. Siegfried's funny sometimes. Yes. Never mind. Anyways, I crack myself up. Yeah.
You crack yourself like an egg.
I do crack myself like an egg. I say that a lot, too much.
You rubbed off on me.
Anyways, yeah, the gift shop was fun. The lady in there was also very sweet. We had a blast. It was a ton of fun. And, yeah, driving back out, I felt kind of... I didn't want to leave. I'll be honest. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of ready to leave because we've been outside for a couple hours, wandering around. But, also I was like, man, this place is so cool. I don't want to go.
Yeah, they also have some hiking trails, which is pretty cool.
Yes. And they had something else that I don't remember what it was. We walked by it, and I don't remember if we even knew what it was.
What?
I don't remember. It was something weird. But yeah, they also did have some construction going on, I think.
Yeah, there's some construction going on around the gardens. There was a big crane.
Yeah, so... But yeah, it was a fun trip. I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah, George Mason is one of the forgotten founders.
Yeah, and significantly cheaper than Mount Vernon.
Yeah, by 2/3.
To be fair, I mean, Mount Vernon was a fantastic trip, and I highly recommend it too if you've never been there. If you've never been to any of these places, obviously you need to go. These places are full of history and very interesting. But yeah, I think Gunston Hall, at least our trip to Gunston Hall, felt a little, to me, I enjoyed it a little more. I think it's just because it's just two of us. And there was, like I said, two people when we came there, one person when we were leaving. It was just so relaxed, and, there's just no one around. We can wander the grounds without bumping into someone or, Yeah, and the house is gorgeous. It's very interesting to walk through and see, like I said, the differences on one half of the house versus the other, and then going upstairs and seeing how the rooms are designed for the kids.
It's interesting. So George Mason, he's often forgotten about, but he's the main reason we have the Bill of Rights, because he was very pushy at the Constitutional Convention for a Bill of Rights. He refused to sign the Constitution because it didn't have a Bill of Rights, which made James Madison be like, okay, we need this. So yeah, we can thank him for having the Bill of Rights. And the tour guide said that after George Mason University was very high up in the March Madness a few years ago. I'm not a basketball person, so I don't know the technical terminology for all that. But apparently they got an influx of people
Yeah, that makes sense.
Visiting, because not a lot of people knew about it.
I was actually kind of surprised, because in my history class, I think it was freshman year. It might have been sophomore, college.
College, okay.
I think it was freshman year, if I remember right. It might have been sophomore year. It's kind of blends together. We had a paper on George Mason. We had to read a book on George Mason and then do outside research, right? But for that particular class, we opted to go to Mount Vernon. The professor opted, not the class.
Yeah.
Instead of Gunston Hall, which just shocked me, because, like, a big part of learning about George Mason was because, like, hey, this is his the university is named after him.
You went to, make it clear, you went
right, I went to George Mason University, and they're like, that's the name of the university. Let's we should know the guy, right? And it's just interesting to me that they didn't opt to do a tour there, because that would have just been more in line with that project. But I mean, not that I'm saying going to Mount Vernon was wrong or anything, but it's just very interesting to me that I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to Mount Vernon instead of George Mason's house. That's fine, but hey. But yeah, I'd highly recommend it. I had a lot of fun. I definitely want to go back, probably in a few years, just to give them time to get all the plants settled and for it to grow up. And then hopefully that also means the wallpaper's changed out so we can see the house in a different way that maybe it was designed, Yeah. They're bound to eventually guess right. So, if we hit it every time, maybe we'll see how it actually looked like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely excited to go back someday. Same with Mount Vernon. Definitely want to go back. I mean, same with all the places I've been. I don't think there's been a historical site where I haven't wanted to go back. Gettysburg. I should talk about my Gettysburg trip someday.
I went to Gettysburg too.
Yeah.
Well, we both went to Gettysburg, but not at the same time. So. Right.
And then we gotta go to Antietam, because I don't think you've been to Antietam.
No, I have not.
I've been there a couple times. Those places, the Civil War places. I mean, we shouldn't get too off tangent, but I mean, since that'll be something we talk about in the future, Gettysburg more specifically, since we've both already been there, and then Antietam hopefully in the future when we manage to get there.
Maybe Petersburg.
Right. Those places are it's a very different experience. We should
also talk about Arlington National Cemetery, since we've both been there.
Yes. Those places are very different. I'd say even Arlington's in its own separate category, because when I went to the Civil War battlefields, and this is just a quick preview for our talk about Gettysburg, I might talk about Antietam a little bit there too, just because I remember that one a little better, because I've been there more. It's a very different experience. You're just walking there, and you're just like, at least how I did it when I would be there, and this is just like high school or even younger. I'm walking around, I'm just like, it could have been me at that age, walking around here not knowing if I was going to die in this battle, and like, just that whole mindset is very different from going to like Gunston Hall, where you're like, woo, I'm going to see George Mason's house, I'm going to see how he lived, like, I'm excited to learn about one of the founding fathers, or George Washington's house, or, it's a totally different experience, and like, I think part of the fun of going to somewhere like Gunston Hall is like, it is a fun day trip. Yeah. When you go to Gettysburg or Antietam, it's not that it's not fun so much as it's just more like, this is going to be a day where I'm not going to necessarily leave smiling, Not that you're going to leave crying, I hope not, but, when we left Gunston Hall, I was excited and full of energy. When I left Gettysburg,
not so much.
I was with a friend when I went. But even so, when we left, it was very somber mood. We were like, plus we were just exhausted because we've been there all day. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I went with my family.
It'll be that'll be a little taste of what we're talking about. Probably next time, but if not, that would be the next historical talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Katie?
Eventually, I think we should also talk about Colonial Williamsburg and Jamestown and Yorktown.
Yes. Yeah.
We should also do Bible studies.
Those are all in the plans.
Sounds
all
good.
in the cards. It's just for the historical talks, I think we'll do Gettysburg next. I might bleed into Antietam a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
As for the next episode of the show, I don't know when. I don't know what. Hopefully, probably sometime next week we'll record the next one. I don't know what it'll be on. But if it is a historical talk, it'll be about Gettysburg. If it's not a historical talk, then we'll see what it is. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day.